To understand the magnitude of what was revealed today, we need to understand who Alexei Navalny was, and why his death sent shockwaves around the world. Navalny wasn't just another political dissident. He was arguably the most significant opposition figure in modern Russia. A man who had built a massive following by exposing corruption at the highest levels of the Russian government. His investigations into the wealth and alleged wrongdoing of Russian officials garnered millions of views online, and he had become a symbol of resistance for those who opposed the current regime. He had survived one assassination attempt already, a notorious poisoning with a nerve agent in August of 2020 that nearly killed him. And after recovering in Germany, he made the stunning decision to return to Russia, knowing full well he would likely be arrested. And arrested he was, almost immediately upon landing in Moscow. 4 years, Navalny languished in Russian prisons, moved from facility to facility, each one seemingly more remote and harsh than the last. His supporters and family members constantly raised alarms about his deteriorating health, the conditions of his imprisonment, and the very real threat to his life. Then, in February of 2024, the news broke that the world had feared but hoped would never come. Alexei Navalny was dead. He was just 47 years old. Russian authorities claimed he had simply collapsed after a walk and could not be resuscitated. The official explanation was vague, unconvincing, and almost immediately met with international skepticism. World leaders condemned what many believed was murder. His supporters knew in their hearts that this was not a natural death. But knowing something and proving it are two entirely different things. What happened next reads like something out of an international espionage thriller. According to reports that emerged in the aftermath of his death, samples from Navalny's body were allegedly smuggled out of Russia. The exact details of how this was accomplished remain shrouded in secrecy, which is understandable given the enormous risks involved and the sensitive nature of such an operation. But somehow, tissue samples made their way into the hands of international investigators. A coalition of 5 nations, the United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, and France, came together to conduct a forensic investigation. These weren't just any investigators. These were some of the world's leading experts in toxicology, chemical weapons, and forensic pathology, working with the most advanced laboratory equipment available. The testing process was meticulous and painstaking. When you're dealing with potential evidence of state-sponsored assassination using exotic toxins, there's no room for error. Every test had to be verified and re-verified. Every finding had to be bulletproof because the implications were enormous. And after months of careful analysis, the investigators made a discovery that stunned even the most seasoned experts in the field. They found traces of a substance called epibetadine, one of the most potent and deadly toxins known to science. This isn't a substance you find in a laboratory supply catalog. This isn't something that occurs naturally in Russia or anywhere near where Navalny was imprisoned. Epibetadine is found in the skin secretions of certain poison dart frogs native to Ecuador. Tiny, brightly colored amphibians that indigenous tribes in South America have used for centuries to coat their hunting darts and arrows. Think about the implications of this for a moment. This toxin had to be obtained, extracted, purified, and then somehow administered to a man being held in one of Russia's most secure prison facilities. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This wasn't something that could be improvised. The use of such an exotic substance points to a level of planning, resources, and capability that only a state actor could possess. British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper didn't mince words when she addressed the findings. She stated unequivocally that only the Russian government had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to use this toxin against Alexei Navalny while he was in their custody. It's a damning accusation, and one that carries with it profound implications for international law and relations. The manner in which this announcement was made is almost as significant as the findings themselves. Yulia Navalnaya didn't hold a solo press conference. She wasn't simply releasing a statement to the media. She stood at the Munich Security Conference, one of the world's most important forums for international security policy, with the foreign ministers of 4 major European powers literally standing behind her. This was a show of solidarity, a message to the world that this isn't just one grieving widow making accusations, but that multiple sovereign nations have reviewed the evidence and are prepared to stand behind these findings. The symbolism of the location and timing is powerful. The Munich Security Conference happens every year and brings together heads of state, defense ministers, and foreign policy leaders from around the globe. Choosing this venue to make the announcement ensures maximum visibility and credibility. Now these findings are being handed over to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the United Nations watchdog responsible for implementing the Chemical Weapons Convention. This is the same body that investigates alleged uses of chemical weapons in warfare and other contexts around the world. Their involvement elevates this from a criminal investigation to a matter of international law. The use of chemical weapons is banned under international treaties that Russia itself has signed. If the findings are confirmed and if responsibility is established, we're not just talking about murder. We're talking about violations of international law that could trigger sanctions, diplomatic consequences, and potentially even referrals to international criminal courts. But let's step back and look at the broader pattern here, because this didn't happen in isolation. Navalny's case is part of what many observers see as a long history of suspicious deaths and assassination attempts targeting critics of the Russian government. From the poisoning of former spy Alexander Litvinenko with radioactive polonium in London, to the nerve agent attack on Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury, to Navalny's own previous poisoning with Novichok in 2020. There's a disturbing pattern. What's particularly chilling about these cases is the apparent willingness to use exotic, traceable substances. These aren't attempts to make deaths look natural or accidental. In many ways, the very unusualness of the methods seems designed to send a message, to demonstrate capability and reach, to instill fear in anyone else who might consider opposing the regime. Conclusion 8:30 to 10 o'clock. The revelation of epibetadine poisoning in Alexei Navalny's death marks a turning point in this story. But it's far from the end. The full investigation results are now in the hands of international bodies, and the diplomatic and legal processes that follow could take months or even years. What happens next will depend on the courage of international institutions to follow the evidence, wherever it leads, and to hold accountable those responsible, regardless of how powerful they might be. For Yulia Navalnaya, this announcement represents both vindication and renewed tragedy. She lost her husband, but she has refused to let his voice be silenced. By standing at that podium in Munich, by working with international investigators, by refusing to accept the official narrative, she has ensured that the world knows the truth about what happened. This case raises profound questions about the nature of power, about the price of dissent in authoritarian systems, and about the international community's willingness and ability to respond when sovereign nations allegedly use chemical weapons against their own citizens. It reminds us that the fight for truth and accountability doesn't end with a death. It often only begins there. Alexei Navalny spent his life exposing corruption and standing up to power. In death, his case has become a rallying cry for those who believe that no government should be above the law, that no leader should be able to silence opposition through poison and intimidation. The toxin may have stopped his heart, but it has not stopped his movement. And it has not stopped the pursuit of justice. As this story continues to develop, as more details emerge and as the international response unfolds, one thing is clear: the world is watching, and the questions being asked will not go away. What price will be paid for silencing dissent? What consequences will follow these revelations? And will justice, however delayed, ever truly be served? These are the questions that will define not just this case, but the future of international accountability in an increasingly complex and dangerous world.